Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we're taking a look at a couple more of my 12-inch action figures from the Star Wars toy line produced by Hasbro. And the two that we're looking at today are from Revenge of the Sith. So this is Barriss Offee and Shaak Ti. And these are two Jedi Knights. And in terms of their actual appearance in the movie, I don't think they really have too much, if at all. But they are featured pretty heavily in the Clone Wars series, which produced quite a bit of storylines for each of these characters, particularly Barriss Offee. In particular, there's a storyline where she actually betrays the Jedi and launches sort of this terrorist attack and tries to blame it on Ahsoka Tano. And it's a very interesting plot line, and it has repercussions in terms of Ahsoka's relationship with the Jedi Knights as well. So definitely worth watching if you're a fan of interesting storylines for Star Wars. That particular sequence, and I believe it happens towards the end of season 5, where the betrayal of Ahsoka actually happens. So pretty interesting storyline, definitely worth checking out. And so Barriss Offee ends up being a very controversial character. She's not represented in that way during the actual prequel films. So when these figures were released, these were the good guys, essentially. And in terms of Shaak Ti, essentially there were several kind of death sequences planned for her. And I don't think any of them actually made it on screen. I know they filmed some sequences with her and General Grievous, but plans changed quite a bit. I know that they were producing the Genndy Tartakovsky version of Clone Wars, in which there was an extended sequence between General Grievous and Shaak Ti on the planet of Coruscant. And at the end of that, sort of Shaak Ti gets captured, not killed, but sort of wrapped up and sort of disabled by General Grievous, and General Grievous escapes from that duel. So they didn't kill her off in that, and I believe George Lucas was planning on killing her off in Revenge of the Sith, but it never actually happened. So, but we do presume that she died at some point during Order 66. In terms of Barriss Offee, we don't really know what happened to her character. So it's kind of up in the air. It's very possible that she might have actually escaped Order 66 at some point, but we don't know. So they may do more with these characters at some point. We'll see what happens. Probably not so much with Shaak Ti, but there's definitely some possibilities for Barriss Offee appearing in future versions of Star Wars. So in terms of the action figures, I do consider these to be two of the best female action figures that Hasbro actually produced for their Star Wars toy line in the scale. Mainly because they were able to reuse the G.I. Jane body, which had been produced for the G.I. Joe line. That was the female version of G.I. Joe. First appeared as a helicopter pilot, and then got several other versions of that figure produced in the G.I. Joe line. And so they used that figure as the basis for both of these. And what that meant was it had sort of that classic collection style articulation, so which was pretty good in terms of doing poses and so forth. As you can see, both these figures can actually hold their lightsaber with both hands. So the articulation on these is pretty good. One thing I should note about both these figures, there was a weird sort of circumstance with them that they included no feet on the figures. The actual boots were glued to the shin, and there was just like a little peg in the bottom of it. So it meant that they did not stand very well. I actually went and did an upgrade on these two figures and added feet to them, which was quite a challenge to actually do because the glue that was holding the boots to the lower part of the leg was actually pretty resistant to being undone. So, but I did a lot of prying and sort of to get these boots off. And then I was able to find feet with the right size that I could actually put in place. So this figure does actually have feet, but it did not originally come with feet. So that's an upgrade that I had to actually make to both these figures to actually make them stand better and have better articulation at the foot. As I can show you, so this actually has ankle articulation back and forth, and also side to side. And that side to side is independent from the pivot point that exists up here too. So yeah, you can actually manipulate the feet. So it is very much in keeping with the original G.I. Jane body, but I did have to actually make that modification in order to, bring this one up to speed. So yeah, that was a weird decision to not include feet with these figures. It could be that they cast the boot size a little bit too small. And, when they came down to actual production, they're like, well, these aren't going to fit on the feet. So we have to do something. So it may have been sort of a last minute sort of compromise to actually make it happen. So, and as you can see, the lightsabers on these are pretty cool. One thing I noticed about both these, the lightsaber handle seems to be a little bit oversized on both these. But overall, pretty cool. And they both have that sort of translucent blade. So you can see the details on this one. This is Barriss Offee's lightsaber. So looking pretty cool. And in terms of the figure itself, I'm going to go over the articulation on this. As you can see, they did a pretty good job in terms of the head sculpt and everything. Like I mentioned, these are some of the best ones that they actually did of the female action figures for the 12-inch scale line. In terms of articulation, like I mentioned, it is similar to Classic Collection articulation. Basically, you get back and forth head, side to side, and also swivel. At the shoulder, she can extend out. Gets 360-degree rotation at the shoulder. There's an elbow bend and also a pivot point there as well. So you get some nice side-to-side movement there. At the wrist, you get bending back and forth like this, and also rotation. So very good flexibility in the arms. At the waist, you get some side to side, front and back, and also swivel. At the hip, she can kick out, kick forward, kick back. And at the knee joint, you get a single bend there, and also side to side rotation here. And like I mentioned, once the feet are added, you can actually get decent foot articulation there as well. But like I mentioned, you will have to find a set of feet to actually do the upgrade. And like I mentioned, it is a little bit of a complex process just because undoing that glue is a bit of a challenge. In terms of her outfit and everything, I think they did a pretty good job. As you can see, she's got that sort of removable hood. It sits a little loosely on her head, but if you fiddle with it enough, you can actually make it look like it's sitting appropriately. And they did some nice detail on her belt as well. So overall, pretty cool figure. What you'll notice is there's a little bit of staining on certain areas of the figure itself from this black outfit. That's true on both of these. The dye used in the fabric for these, it happens on quite a few action figures that have sort of these darker outfits. Sometimes it causes staining of the plastic on which they appear. But it doesn't really bother me too much. It isn't overly apparent. It appears quite a bit like on her lower legs and so forth, but it's covered up by the rest of her outfit, so it's really not too much of a big deal. So in terms of Shaak Ti, again, I think they did a really amazing job in terms of the head sculpt and everything. All these detail with the tentacles and everything on her head. She is the same species as Ahsoka Tano, but obviously an older version of that species. And again, the lightsaber handle is a little bit large for this figure, but they did really good detail on it. So I'm actually pretty happy with the overall look of this. As you can see, it's got that sort of little bit of a bronze detail up here. So looking pretty cool with the lightsaber. And in terms of her outfit, they did a lot of detail on this as well. So you can see there's a lot of intricate detailing here with the belt and whatever this thing is that hangs down, and also these little details as well. So really cool looking figure. Definitely a cool design for a character. I'd say the one drawback on this, other than obviously what I mentioned in terms of the feet, I did the same upgrade on this figure that I did on the Barriss Offee figure. I added feet to this, so she does have ankles articulation inside of the boots. So it helps the figure stand better, so it's definitely worth doing as an upgrade. But the other major drawback for this figure is the head articulation is very limited because these tentacles are not very flexible. So you can get a little bit of, side to side and movement with the head. The head articulation is there. It's just these tentacles, including this back tentacle, really inhibit her movement. So you really can't move that head around very much at all. I mean, you can do a little bit of side to side, but in terms of, rotation, it's not going to move around very much. But the rest of the articulation is pretty much identical to the Barriss Offee figure. So very cool, just in terms of having a couple of these Jedi Knights from the prequel era. And I think they did a really good job in terms of the detailing. You can see the detail on the boot, laces and everything like that. So it looks very cool. So again, just very excited to have these figures in my collection. I don't think they were particularly common to actually find. I only ever saw them, I think, maybe once or twice at retail. And pretty much as soon as I saw them, I went ahead and picked them up just because having, any kind of female character from the Star Wars toy line that was done, as well as these ones was definitely worth purchasing. So again, I'm very excited to have these in my collection. I'm a big fan of, the Jedi Knights of the prequel era. And as I mentioned, these two characters do get a lot of extra treatment in the Clone Wars series. So in terms of fleshing their characters out, in the actual films, they're mostly in the background. But later on, they get much more interesting roles in the sort of Clone Wars era. That's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more reviews of Star Wars action figures in the future, think about subscribing to my channel because I will be covering more of this kind of stuff in future videos. Until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and may the Force be with you. Thanks for watching.